So I'm going to open up Adobe Illustrator. This is something I've kind of set up so that we can focus in on each tool. But if you were to just open up Adobe Illustrator to start a new document, you would just go to File, New, and you would pull up a clean tab here. If you look down here, this is where you can select the number of artboards you want in your document. If you were just to open a new file with one artboard, it would pull up this right here where you've just got one big canvas to work with. Artboards can be really helpful though if you're kind of building a bunch of different elements that you want to combine into one illustration. You can just kind of set up a whole canvas with a bunch of different artboards so that you can work on different elements and put them together. So here's a new one with just one artboard. If I was to scroll down on my toolbar and select the artboard tool, this is how I can kind of resize my major artboard, and if I wanted to start drawing a couple more to be able to work with different elements, that is all done with this artboard tool. And another good thing about this is when you get to the stage where you're done working in Adobe Illustrator and you want to export to a different file type, like a PDF or a JPEG, you can do that based on the artboard. So if I've got a bunch of stuff on artboard 1 and that's the only thing I want to turn into a JPEG, you have the option for selecting that when you go to export. So here's one that I've set up with a ton of different artboards. And what we're going to work on illustrating today is this picture of the campus, which if you take a look, that's for later. If you take a look, I think we can do this by just putting together a bunch of the different shapes that we see in the image. So a couple different rectangles, and then we have a couple of these like domed windows, a few trees. If you zoom in, we're going to work with a Cornell logo just so that it's totally clear what this building is. So let's get started doing that in Illustrator. And to start, we're just going to draw some of the big rectangle shapes. So on my toolbar, I'll select this rectangle tool. On the toolbar, if any of these tools have a little white triangle in the bottom right-hand corner, that means that there are other functions buried beneath that top one. So if I hit that, it'll show you that the rectangle tool is also how you're going to draw a rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, star, or the flare tool, which is a really cool design. If I go to this little flyout thing, it pulls up the whole menu that you can kind of have floating in your workspace if you want to toggle back and forth between the different shapes. So just select rectangle and pull out a rectangle shape. If you wanted to make this a perfect square, I would hold down the Shift key, and then that gives me a perfectly dimensional square shape. But in this case, we do want to draw rectangles to draw Cornell. So, and I'm actually going to start with kind of a low, long one to be the sidewalk. We'll draw another rectangle here to kind of be the base. And Illustrator is going to pull up much like InDesign. It gives you a lot of these different kind of magenta toolbars to show you when your different lines are intersecting, and that is enormously helpful. So let's also draw, I've got the sidewalk and this rectangle, and then I'm going to want to do kind of like a lighter shade rectangle on top of this. So I'll line up my cursor, pull out another rectangle, and it'll snap into place right there. And then let's just draw one more kind of tall one to be the top of the building. Hit Command and the plus, and that will zoom you in, and that's where after you've drawn your rectangles, you can kind of go back and tweak the sizes, because as you can see, I'm a little off here. So go ahead and select this selection tool, Control V, and then from here, you can kind of pull in some of these anchor points and make sure everything is all lined up. So it take as much time as you need with that, but that's basically how you've gotten started drawing your rectangles. So the next shape we want to work on are these long oblong windows. And to build this, I'm sure there are plenty of different ways. The simplest way I could figure out how to do this for our purposes were to use a tool called the Shape Builder and to combine an ellipse shape and a rectangle shape. So let me draw out another artboard and I'll show you the steps for doing that. All right, so basically I've got this new artboard. I'm going to go back to my rectangle tool and draw kind of a tall, skinny rectangle shape. And then on top of that, I want to have kind of this rounded point. So I'll go to this flyout menu and select the ellipse. And I'll draw a spherical shape. This again, if you see the cross marks in that ellipse tool, that means you're drawing a perfect circle. But if you want kind of more of a sphere like we want, you can kind of drag it down into an oval. So this is a good start, but I want it to be a little bit more peaked on the end, kind of like more of an egg shape. With Illustrator, you can work with all of these different individual anchor points. So go ahead and click on the white arrow, which is your direct selection tool, and this gives you a little more control over all these individual anchors. And I'm going to click on this top one and then just drag it up so that I've got kind of more of a point. It's almost like a bullet shape. So then from there, I want to fit this ellipse onto the rectangle to build this nice long oval that's a rectangle on the bottom and a dome on the top. So I'll go back to my selection tool and drag it over. And then I'm going to zoom in just to make sure I'm sizing these so that they line up nice and clean. And this might take, when you're doing this at your desk, it might be a little more painstaking than I'm going to do here just for the purposes of time. But I promise you that with enough time, you can get these to line up so that the shapes fit really nicely together. So let's say I'm kind of got a point here that if I were doing this on my own, I would clean it up a little bit more, but you get the idea. Actually, I would rather have this wider than that. Okay, so we've got the two shapes together, but then I want to merge them together into one object so that I can then work with that object, with the oval object. So I'm going to use the Shape Builder tool. So first, select the ellipse, hit Shift, and this lets you select multiple objects. So with Shift held down, I'm also going to select this rectangle, and now we've got both of the shapes selected. And then I'm going to go over to my Shape Builder tool, which is right here. And if you hover over any of these tools, it'll tell you what they are. Select the Shape Builder tool, and Shape Builder lets you merge together any of the shapes you've got on your artboard. So you're basically just going to click on this and draw a little squiggly line through all the shapes you want to combine, release it, and then you've got your big shape. And again, you can kind of see here where I had messy edges. I know you would take more time doing that. So there we've got one of the dome windows. So the next thing I want to do is kind of draw these panes to add some detail and make it look like the college looks. And to do that, we're going to draw some lines. So here's a board. We're going to work with this in just a second, but to draw a line in the shape, hover over this. This is your line segment tool. And again, if I hit this triangle at the bottom, this shows you all of the different types of lines you can draw. We just want to draw a straight line in this instance. So I've got my line tool selected, and I want to draw a straight line from the very bottom to the top. So I'm going to pull my cursor down to the bottom of my shape, and the magenta lines are telling me exactly where the center of the shape is, which is super helpful. Hold down Shift, and that's going to let you draw a perfectly straight line when you drag your tool up to the top. And again, it'll tell me right when I've intersected that line segment with the path of the other object, and I can release. I am going to draw two more to work with, but instead of drawing new lines, I just want to duplicate this one that I've already done. So to do that, I'm going to go back to my selection tool, click on that line segment, hold down Alt, and then I'm going to click the line and drag it over. This is on, you guys should have handouts that have different key shortcuts. This Alt one is super helpful because it's going to help you duplicate shapes and you're not going to redouble your efforts every time you want to draw something new.
Are these commands for Windows and PC?
Ooh, that is a good point. I think it might all be for Mac actually, because I'm selfish and I use a Mac, so I just did the Mac ones. But
I could tell you most Adobe programs, the keystrokes are the same.
Oh, cool.
The only difference is Command and Control key. So that's usually where the only difference is.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. All right, so with this selected, I also want to make sure, if you can see right now, the cursor on the screen has the tail on the arrow. You want to hover over it so that that tail disappears. And this is when you're actually kind of working with the object. So click on that, hit Alt, and then we just duplicated this line and dragged it over. And let's do this one more time to do a third. And cool. And then from here, I'm going to Control Zoom, and this is where I would adjust this a little bit. And again, hold down Shift so that your line stays straight, and you can just kind of snap it in so that the lines intersect with the path again. Now comes the task of drawing all of the little short lines. So to do that, I would, just the same as we did before, I'm going to do this really quickly because I want to show you how you're going to align these. So let's say I'm working, I'm like drawing all these little lines, and this is great, and I have them all drawn, but obviously they're super messy, and I want them to line up perfectly. There is a tool on here that helps you align objects. To do that, hit on your selection tool, and make sure up here that Align to Selection is highlighted. If you were to hit Align to Artboard, then all of the little alignment tools would align based on the borders of your artboard, but this will help you align different objects to another object that you selected. So make sure that's there, and then click on that selection, and then hold down your Shift key and click on all of these different little lines that we want to make sure they're aligned with like perfect space in between them all. And then you can see you've got all of these different shortcuts up here for different ways to align objects. For this one, we want to do vertical distribute, and that's going to put an even amount of space in between all these objects vertically. So go ahead and hit that, and you've got them all spaced out perfectly. And if I had filled this up with lines, it would kind of spread it out within that oval shape. So this is one where I've already done that. And I also wanted to show you all how to draw lines with arrow points because as much as we all want to draw beautiful illustrations, when you get back to your desk, it's probably more likely you're going to work on more practical things like images like this, flowchart stuff. This is a workflow diagram we drew for our new eForms rollout, and we wanted to be able to draw little arrows here to show the workflow. Illustrator is a great tool to do stuff like this because you can draw simple, basic illustrations and then turn it into a JPEG that you can put in emails and communications. And so keep in mind that just knowing how to do these basic lines and shapes lets you do some stuff to kind of supplement your work on a pretty basic level. So if I wanted to draw a line with an arrow, I would select my line segment tool and then hold Shift to draw a straight line. And then here where stroke is underlined, this is where you're controlling the weight of the line that you draw and also the colors, which we're going to get into in just a moment. But if you hit this stroke link, it gives you a couple more options for how you want the lines to appear, including arrowheads. So if you hover over, this says this is how you can kind of change the beginning of the line. This is how you change the end of the line. So let's put a cool tail on the beginning and then a good point on the end. And there you've got an arrow. All right, so I have now made this one long window with all of the different panes defined. But if I look at my image here, so I need 3 of these, and then I need 3 of these kind of like shorter, fatter windows. And I definitely don't want to draw all of those from scratch. Luckily, with this Alt-Shift tool, you don't have to. So what you're going to do is I want to duplicate this window 3 times. So what I'll do is with the selection tool highlighted, drag a little box over the whole object, and it's going to select all of the different points in the object you've drawn. Go up to Object and hit, oh, this is already grouped together, but what you would do, select it all so that it's all highlighted, and then Object Group. And now this has kind of sealed all of the different objects together into one, and you can work with it as one object. So let's say I want to make another long window. I'll select that, hit Alt, and drag it over, and now you've got another one. And do that as many times as you need to, depending on how many of the objects you need to duplicate. And then from there, since I've got this grouped together, I can adjust the width and the height of it to make some of the shorter, fatter windows. So I've got this selected, and then just pull your cursor down to the bottom right corner so that it's that kind of diagonal arrow, and this is where you can adjust the size. So I'm going to make it shorter. I'm going to pull out this anchor to make it a little wider, and then once you're happy with the shape of this new one, you can go ahead and duplicate that. From here also, like now I'm looking at this and I'm seeing like, oh, actually maybe I don't like some of these lines, like maybe I want to fix that one and that one. You can always go back and ungroup it so that now you've got all these individual points again and you can kind of play with any of the elements. Okay, so we've got our windows drawn out. Now I want to change the fill color and the stroke color to give them some dimension. So here's my object selected. And up here, this is how I control the fill color of the shape and the stroke color of the shape. So I'm going to select this one. And for this long window, I want to do it a different shade just so there's some differentiation in the illustration. Let's do like a light beige. And if I click off, you can see I've got the light beige color in the panes, but the strokes are still black. I want to make those white. So select my object again. And this stroke color is just what Illustrator calls like the line surrounding an object. So this I'm going to select paper to make it white. And I'm also going to bump up the weight of the lines in the panes so that they're a little more visible and a little more interesting. And there you go. And then you can do that for your shorter windows. Another way to do this would be to do the fill and the stroke color first, and then to do your Alt-Shift and duplicate all of these different guys once you've got the colors figured out, and that's a little bit less work. So these are a couple other tools that help you combine shapes. The Shaper tool, I was actually hesitant to demo. I think it just got introduced to Adobe Creative Cloud. I played around with it for like 2 hours yesterday, and it looks like it can do really cool things, but it's kind of hard to work with. So I'm going to show you how to do it, and then there are a load of tutorials on how to actually get it to do the things you want it to do. It's a little frustrating, but the results can be interesting if you can get it right. But basically how this works is, so I want to make this crescent moon because on my illustration of the campus, I want to get a little fancy and put like a moon hanging in the sky. So with the Shaper tool, it lets you put shapes together and then like punch out where they overlap. So to do this moon, this is how it should work. Let's draw a perfect cylinder here. And then on top of that, we'll draw one more ellipses. And I'm going to change the color of this so that it's easier to see like the crescent shape that I'm kind of going for. Okay. So select this and kind of drag it into place until that crescent looks the way you want it. You can adjust the size of the overlapping ellipse. And then, yeah, this looks good. I kind of like that beige shape. So now what I want to do is punch out the yellow so that it just leaves me with the crescent. So with the Shaper tool, I'm going to select this, hit Shift to select the one behind it. And then the Shaper tool is this one right here. Make sure that's selected here. And you basically, kind of like the way the Shape Builder tool worked, you're going to scribble into the area that you want to punch out. And when I was trying this morning, what worked the best was to kind of trace this shape and then release, and it didn't work. Wait, let me try one more time, and if it doesn't work, I'm going to move on and say, take a tutorial in the Shaper tool, and maybe you will have better luck. Shift, Shaper. Okay, yeah, it's not going to work for me. If it does work, what it would do is kind of punch out this orange shape and leave you with this crescent right here. And you can kind of see, if I click on this, you can see like the outlines of the shape that was on top. But anyway, Shaper tool, work in progress. But it's how you could get this crescent moon shape. Let's move on to one that's a little easier to work with, and that is the Shape Builder tool. And this, I just wanted to draw a couple trees for the sidewalk in front of Cornell. To do this one, we're going to go back to the ellipse and draw 3 little circles. And let's adjust these so that they're kind of in this tree shape. I'm going to drag this out a little bit. All right, so now I've got these 3 separate shapes, but I want them to merge together as one, like this one. So to do this, kind of the same way we built the windows, select this one ellipse, hold down Shift, so you can do multiple select of all the objects. We're going to go back to the Shape Builder tool and make sure that's selected, and then scribble into all of these things we want to merge together, including the center, and there you go. And then the trunk is just a couple line segments. Shift. Make sure the weight is something you can see. I also kind of want to make this a cool color, like maybe purple. And let's do this a couple more times. To draw the branches. And your zoom will help you get in there and kind of make sure everything's all lined up. Cool. And once you're happy with the shape you've built, again, with your selection tool highlighted, you can drag over all of the different objects, group them together, and then you can work with this tree, drag it around, make more, whatever you want to do. Draw a whole forest. So the last thing I want to make sure we've got is this wall Cornell logo to make it totally obvious that the building we've drawn is our college. If you go to the brand website, you can download the master brand package, which includes a couple Illustrator files. So download that whole thing, and then you're going to find the logo drawn in Illustrator, which I've actually got. Oh, not this one. I think I have it pulled up already. Yeah. There's the AE file of the logo itself. And you can see if you click on it, it's got all of the little objects defined, and you can work with this right in Illustrator. So I'm actually just going to do Control Copy and pull it in to the file I'm working with. Control Paste, and there you go. And from here you can resize it as big or small as you want it. I wanted to put this on top of like this silver rectangle shape. So again, I drew out a rectangle. The fill is silver. I think I got rid of the stroke. And then you can drag this into place and kind of play with the size and make sure it's all lined up the way you like it. And then you probably won't have this many artboards, but I wanted to do this to kind of emphasize all the different tools. But you would then kind of move all of your different elements together into the illustration, into your final illustration. So you've got this in Illustrator. Now let's say I want to send this to someone that maybe doesn't have Illustrator, or I want to put it in an email or a different document. This is when I would export it into a JPEG. So let's just make sure, because I have so many artboards on this canvas, I want to make sure I know what number I'm working on. So hit my artboard tool, and this tells me, okay, this is artboard number 3. I need to know that. Let's go up to File and Export. And here's where you select your format. I want to make this into a JPEG, but you've got a bunch of different options. And then make sure this Use Artboards box is selected. And from here, I could do all of them, or I could just export artboard number 3, which is the one I want to do because that has my illustration. You can adjust a couple more colors. Oh, I've already saved this, but yeah, let's replace it. And then I'll open up the JPEG of this. And there you go. We're just about out of time, but if you signed up on the sheet, I will send you, this is a tutorial in Adobe that basically, it's exactly what we just did. It practices all of these different tools and just walks you through how to draw a farmscape. So I'm going to send you a link to this tutorial. You can get back to your desk and kind of play around with exactly what we just did, and some extra things, how to like adjust triangle sizes, and it's very fun. So that's about it. If there are any questions, please let me know. You're welcome.